Teaching math in the Bronx, take 8. All right, buenos dias, everybody. Let us see. Will you learn a lot of math today? What does the Magic 8 Ball say? It is certain. Holy moly, 3 for 3 every time I ask the Magic 8 Ball, will you learn? It's never said no so far. And it's not like I retake the video and wait until it says yes. It actually has said yes every time. So you guys are on a hot roll. Let's do this. What is the game plan today? Determine whether the following graphs are a function or not, right? So if we just need to have this paper here, make sure you have a piece of loose leaf paper and I will give that to you. You could take a minute just to copy this down, right? Today is Thursday, October 23rd, 2025. What is the one vocabulary word for today? Vertical line test, right? So take a minute, pause the video, copy this down. Let me write the definition. If you draw a vertical line and it intersects the graph more than once, we don't have a function. All right. So let me have this over here. All right. So pause the video. Have this. Right. Okay. So now imagine you have this done. What we're gonna do is let's take a look at this over here. Let's look at the first question. Using the vertical line test, do you have a function for this graph? Well, let's see. What I do is let's grab any pencil, any line, and let's just draw vertical lines, right? So if I draw a line like this, I could draw a line like this, and you see it doesn't really matter where you draw the line, but every single time I draw the line, how many times do these vertical lines hit this graph? It only hits one time. It only hits one time. So then, yes, you have a function, right? Yes, function. Right. And now here, when you take a look at this paper, be a little bit patient. If you can explain why you have a function, that's really strong. So let's take a look. Why does just drawing these vertical lines satisfy the definition of a function, right? Because what was the idea of a function from yesterday? Can you remember? Can you remember? Pause the video. Do you have it in your notes? Can you write it down? Do you remember? Each x has one and only y value. So when you take a look over here, let's say I look at this point over here, right? Let's take a look at this point over here. If and let's make the line, let's say the line is here, right? And this is the point. Notice that if my x value is 4, what's my y value? It looks like it's also like, let's say it's 5, right? But every time when x is equal to 4, what is the only y value it has? It's only 5. Notice when x is 4, is there any other y value? There is not, right? So then here you have a function. What I'd like you to do is go through this page. Which ones are functions and which ones are not, right? Let's take a look. Here, I draw my vertical line. And notice what happens. Not a function. Because you're hitting 2 points. And if this is my x value of -4, notice it has 2 y values, right? It has one of the other y values of -6, and it looks like this y value of +6. So notice that here, when x is equal to one number, it has 2 y values. So then it fails the definition of a function. Okay. Not a function. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Oh, look at this line over here. Notice for this line over here, how many times does it hit the graph? It only hits once, right? Because remember, this is an open circle. This is an open circle over here. So this is a function. This is a function. Okay. Let's look at the next one over here. If I draw my lines, no matter how many lines I draw, it only hits the graph one time. It doesn't matter where. This is a function. And what about this one over here? I draw my line, it hits once. It hits once. It hits once. It hits once. Does it hit a second time? No, it does not, because there is an open circle, so this is a function. Okay. All right, not too bad, not too bad. I hope you got this right. I hope you got this right. Let's turn the page. Let's turn the page. Let's take a look and continue the journey. Over here, let's take a look. What I want you to do is pause the video, give it a read. Can you try this by yourself? Can you try this by yourself? Let's see, let's see. Here, let me get a better piece of paper. Whoa. Let me get a better piece of paper so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, that is much better. Okay, so let's take a look. Observe the following graph below, and we just went over it that it does represent a function, right? This is the same picture from the first page, right? So it's the same one as this function over here. So let's take a look. Here, this represents a function. So this is a function. Let's write function, and then let's write a check mark. Happy face, right? What could you do visually to make this graph not a function? What could you do? Because right now this is a function, because anytime I draw a line, it only hits the graph one time. But what could you do to make this not a function? Well, you remember when I had this part over here and when I drew the line, notice it only hits the graph one time over here, but does it hit the graph over here? It does not. So what you kind of want to do is you kind of want to close this circle. You want to close that circle, because if I close that circle, now this is not a function, right? Because it hits 2 points. So what could you do visually to make this graph not a function? Okay, well, you could close that open circle, right? And this is from yesterday. What is the algebraic statement we can write to show you're going to close that circle, right? What can you algebraically write? Hint, use some x value equals some y value. Pause the video. If you could do this without looking, that is a big thumbs up. That is a big thumbs up. What can you do to close this circle? And hint, for this circle, what's the x value? -2. What's the y value? +2. We learned something yesterday about some f of x. If I do this, this will close the circle. Because from yesterday, when x equals -2, what do we want y to be? We want y to be +2. All right? So this is a very good Regents question. It's like, you see that it's a function, what could you do to not make it a function? And speaking of Regents questions, holy moly, we have a Regents question over here. Bobo the monkey from the classroom, right? Bobo claims that the graph below represents a function. State whether Bobo is correct. Justify your answer. Regent's question. Pause the video. Let's see what you got. Try and go through this question. Do you have a function? Bobo is incorrect. This graph is not a function.
Good morning.
Oh my goodness. Graph is not a function, right? If you write this on the Regents, you get 1 out of 2 points. How do you actually, because this is stating that Bobo is incorrect, which he's not, right? And why is he not correct? Because it fails the vertical line test, right? It hits 2 points over here. But you got to justify. Pause the video. Do you have a correct justification of why this is not a function? And try and be as extra and specific as possible. Notice, when x equals 2, right? So when x is equal to 2, we have 2, 1, right? Because this point over here is 2, 1. What's this point over here? 2, 3. The y repeats. Sorry, not the y. The x repeats, right? You have 2, when x is equal to 2, it has 2 different y values. So not a function. Okay. Now if you do this, you get 2 out of 2. And we could all get the most amount of points. All right. Let's continue. What I'd like you to do is, here we have a review from last week with this page and this page. And then we have these questions over here, but these are the really, really good questions over here. These are all Algebra 1 Regents questions, okay? What I'd like you to do is, let's see what you got. Can you get these questions correct? Pause the video, and what I'm going to do is, I'm just gonna show the answers little by little, okay? So I won't explain it as much, and what we could do is we could go over these questions in class, okay? So pause the video and try these questions on your own. Don't just copy what I do and say, oh, Mr. Look, I'm done. Let's see what you got, okay? And what I'll do is I'll go through the answers, okay? Only look at the answers when you are done, right? Or if you have a question, okay? Oh no, because of time, I gotta teach soon. I will show these in class. I hope you had fun.